There are plenty of upgrades or mods that you can do with your mice, but only 3 that require pretty much no skill and pretty much no investment whatsoever. And those are feet, grips and paracord cables. So I'll give you guys my opinion on when these mods could actually be useful. And we will also check out which grips, which paracords, which feet are the best ones. Starting with mouse feet, which is the simplest, easiest and the cheapest way to improve the performance of your mouse. In this video I'll be mainly talking about PTFE feet and which ones do I think are the best, but in a month or so I should have some class feet for the Superlight and some other mice so I can test those extensively. But at this moment I still think that PTFE is the absolute best material for mouse feet. But the material is not all that matters, shape and size is very important as well. Smaller feet like for example on the Starlight 12 can be very good with control pads, but they can offer some more resistance than feedback on rough pads. And sometimes the experience can be way too rough with small feet. Then again larger feet like for example the Sawi stock feet, they can feel very good with rough surfaces, but they can feel quite slow on some control pads. These are not of course pure PTFE, so that also makes them slower, but for example something like the Addice stock feet, they are quite large and pure PTFE, and they can still feel somewhat slow on some control pads. The 3 best feet in my opinion are Tiger Arcs, Tiger Eyes and Core Pads. In most cases you should just get whatever is the cheapest and the most available for you, but for example with the Superlight I've actually had some issues with the Core Pad feet. They are quite thick and they can feel very slow on some mud pads like for example the GPC1 from Xtrafy. The thickness of the Core Pads actually changes the DPI accuracy of your mouse because the surface to sensor distance changes significantly. So for example you might notice that your in-game sensitivity feels a little bit slower with the Core Pads than with the stock feet. It's not a big deal and you can just fix this by upping your DPI on G-Hub. But overall I'm not happy with the experience on my GPX, and with this mouse I actually prefer something like the Tiger Eyes or the Tiger Arcs. The differences between these feet are small, but the Tiger Eyes are the smoothest, then comes the Tiger Arcs, and the Core Pads feel the roughest for me at least. How mouse feet can actually affect your in-game performance is highly affected by your mouse pad and your preference. For example, some people like a slower combination like for example the Sawi feet and the GPC1, and then again others can like a faster combination like Tiger Eyes and Artisan Iron. For me personally, I usually don't feel the need to switch mouse feet on any faster pad. Something like the LethalGamingGear MPC 450, the LethalGamingGear Venus, the Sky pad, the Artisan High-End, the Artisan High-End, the Otsu, all of those feel very good with almost all stock feet that I've tried. In terms of speed that is, like I already mentioned, some small feet can feel quite rough with for example the Artisan High-End. When it comes to mud pads, I sometimes would want to change the feet, for example something like the Sawi stock feet do feel quite muddy with mud pads. It's a matter of personal preference, but for me, that combo would be highly improved by Core Pads for example. They give you more speed, but you don't lose that much of the control. So there are only 2 situations when I feel the need to change my mouse feet. One is when my mouse is too slow on some mouse pad, and one is when the feeling is too rough. Moving on to paracords, and there are many different kinds of those. For example, LethalGamingGear is coming out with these slim paracords, and then there are these more standard ones that I've bought from Mastery Gear and Paracables. I've had no issues with pretty much any of the cables myself. For example, the old Xtrafy cable was highly criticized and I had no issues with that. And same applies for the Waxy cable, and I really have no issues with that either. I think it's mostly a mental thing, but also if you play with a very low sensitivity, then you can run into issues with these stiffer cables. I would recommend you experiment with the stock cable before you invest into a new one, because this is also a matter of getting adjusted to something new. The difference is massive with the Paracord and the Waxy stock cable, but it does not really change anything for me because I play with a medium to high sense. I can set both of them up in a bungee so that I do not feel them, and I can use them both without a bungee with ease. The only issue with the Paracord for me is that when I use it without a bungee and swipe really hard, it can get under the mouse and that's really irritating. But of course an easy fix is to use a bungee. Alright, and then moving on to mouse grips, and these can be actually quite useful in some situations. For me there are a few different use cases for these. One is that when there is holes on the sides of the mouse, I can cover those with grip tape. They of course improve the grip as well, and how much, that's highly dependent on what grips you have. I've tried Core Pads, these lizard skins and these BTL grips, and I have to say that my favorites are these lizard skins. I was experimenting with the grip tapes on the GPX and I applied them beneath the side buttons and where my ring finger and my side buttons are on the right side. These lizard skins are actually insanely grippy, and with the GPX, which can be quite hard to grip consistently, these can also help with that. So you sort of know where to to hold your fingers all the time. One thing that I keep seeing a lot is that people use these grip tapes on shapes that do not necessarily work for them that well. So if you wrap your mouse pretty much completely with grip tapes, it means that it increases the size a little bit. And even 1mm can make quite a big difference on the sides or on the top of the mouse, so you can definitely feel that. So for example, if you have a perfect shape that's too thin for you, you can try grip tapes to increase the width. That's basically what I've done with the small Starlight 12, although I do not feel that this is too thin for me, but I do like the increase in width. And of course it also covers the hole, so it's kind of two things at once. I've used aftermarket feet, paracords and grips for a while, and I can say that they can improve the experience with your mouse. Paracord cables can make your setup look more aesthetic, but I think that's the main use case these days. These stock cables are just so good, but of course I haven't tried these new thin LethalGamingGear cables, so that might change my experience completely. Then again, mouse feet can actually completely change your gaming experience. Some mouse and mousepad combos can be made much faster if that's something you like. Considering which feet I do recommend the most, it's basically down to your own preference. So do you want something smooth like the Tiger Eyes, or do you want something maybe a little bit rougher feeling like the core pads? For me myself, I do enjoy the core pads most for almost all mice apart from the Superlight, which I do enjoy the Tiger Eyes a little bit more. And the grips can be good to make your mouse fit you better. You can of course argue that if you need to make the mouse thicker, it's not a good shape for you, but if you don't want to invest in a new mouse and the thickness is the only issue that you have, I definitely can recommend for you to try mouse grips. I can easily recommend the lizard skins, as these are by far the best in terms of how grippy they are, and they are the cheapest as well. If you are from NA, you can get pretty much all of this stuff from LethalGamingGear, and if you are European, you can get it from Max Gaming. If you want information on what could be the best mousepad for you, check this video right here. And here is the Extra M4 wireless review, which is one of my favorite wireless ergos. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you enjoy my content, hit that subscribe button, and see you in the next one.